First, we want to check in with our media partners from thevoiceofoc.org for an update on what's happening this week in Orange County government and politics.
Here to talk about issues in the news right now, we welcome the editor-in-chief for Voice of OC, Norberto Santana. Hi, Norberto.
Ed, Ann, thanks for having me again.
Yeah, thanks for returning. Let's start first of all in the city of Santa Ana and the city manager over there. Okay, let's talk about the $1 million payout first of all that happened, and then let's discuss who is running the place over there.
This seems to be the big question these days in Santa Ana. Council members some time ago paid almost $1 million to pay out city manager Paul Walters. The idea being that Paul Walters, who was the former police chief, was too close to longtime mayor Miguel Polito. The rest of the council was very adamant about exerting its will. They went ahead and paid him an early payout to his contract, almost $1 million, to move him aside. They brought in an interim city manager, a gentleman named Kevin McCarthy. And lo and behold, this week we break a story about another $200,000 payout. An assistant to Paul Walters named Hank Cousin cashed out almost $185,000 in vacation, sick time, and in some ways, by reading his labor contract, it looks like it was about $70,000 over the mark. When we presented council members with that fact, they once again had serious questions to McCarthy and others about how can that kind of stuff happen without them knowing. The continuing question in Santa Ana continues to be is who's running the city?
Right.
Okay, they called a special meeting, the interim city manager. What was that for?
Well, again, as they continue to move on, one of the things that they're getting very worried about is that management partners, a group that they had come in and talk about, let's have a holistic approach to the budget, let's bring the community in to talk about that. Well, they spent so much time trying to get rid of Paul Walters that now they're not prepared for the impending budget deliberations that they have and the process that they wanted to do, which was to bring many of the city into the process. And again, in Santa Ana, given that it's such a diverse and working class population, that's really been the challenge, and apparently they're not going to meet that mark now.
Yeah, we kind of glossed over just a little bit the payout that Hank had for the amount of time that he had stored as far as vacation leave and that sort of thing that he's now getting the payout for. Is that legal to do that?
Well, this is the big question. We put the question to council members. They don't know. From our reading of his labor contract, it is not according to the contract. The contract caps the amount of vacation and sick pay that can't be paid out. His payout seems to go well above that.
Right. Okay, let's move on to the city of Anaheim. They lost their city manager. You have traced this back to a staff report, which you think was sort of the beginning of the end for this entire situation. Talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. This week, Bob Wiggenroth, who was the city manager there since about 2011, just abruptly announced his resignation to spend more time with family. Usually when those of us that follow government and politics, when people start talking about spending more time with their family, it's almost a guarantee that there's been some type of controversy or something's gone wrong. In his case, he was the author of a very well-known memo now about a year ago when the city council was intent on granting a hotelier in that community a tax subsidy of $158 million. Bob Wiggenroth wrote a staff report that essentially said you're crossing the threshold here. It's okay to use tax subsidies to benefit some developments, but when you're giving a developer 80% of all the tax he generates, that's going above and beyond. Well, that report really kind of caused a split in the city council there. The issue did. We've seen that issue play out. You know, last week the city police chief resigned. Before that, the city attorney was blown out. There's talk now about the council gearing up to run somebody against Tom Tate in next year's elections. It's gotten very nasty, and apparently it's too much for Bob to stay in there.
And it's going to continue now. The ACLU in that lawsuit, what's the status with that?
Another issue in Anaheim that continues to hang over their head. This week, a judge told the city council that he was going to delay action on a lawsuit brought by the ACLU alleging that the city's method of electing council members at large is essentially a racist makeup because it doesn't allow any people of minorities to be able to run successfully for office. The judge essentially this week put a halt on it and said, let's delay that until July while we allow a city council commission that they have set up to sort of study the electoral system and bring forth some ideas. The concern many activists there is that that's going to take too long, and once again you have the 2014 elections looming.
Norberto, in this particular case now, my understanding, this is according to the city, that 10 seats have been up for election since 2002 with 7 filled by either Asian or Hispanic members. So what's actually going on?
Well, that's part of the city's argument that there is no need for wards or for district elections because there has been representation. Even though right now you have an all-white city council, mostly from the Anaheim Hills section, they say historically that has been able to be accomplished. That I think is one of the reasons why the judge has sort of taken a seat back and said, let's let you figure this out, and we'll come back and talk to each other in July and see what you've worked out.
Okay, let's move on to the city of Santa Barbara, actually Santa Barbara County. Chandra Waller had applied for a job here in Orange County. That got out, that leaked out, and her employers up there in Santa Barbara County were not all that pleased with that whole move on her part. Now she has lost her job altogether. Talk a little bit more about what led up to that whole situation.
Again, this is a nasty debate about executive compensation at a time where rank and file workers are being asked to pay more for their pensions. Whenever these types of debates are applied to executives, you get a lot of blowback. In this case, Chandra Waller all but had the job to be the CEO of Orange County, one of the biggest in America. It got held up on about $40,000 in a question that the supervisors wanted her to cover her own pension. And they also, because of the recent additions to the Brown Act, had to have these debates in public. And they netted some very interesting and in some ways nasty debates. They and Chandra Waller were not able to come to a deal. Apparently, when she went back to her own board of supervisors, frankly, it was a story that we broke in the middle of the process, kind of outing her as the candidate negotiating. Well, apparently this week, the supervisors in Santa Barbara County released her from her contract. So now, even though she's available, the talk inside Orange County is for the amount of money that they want to pay for a CEO, which is about capped at about $250,000, they're beginning to look internally at candidates, kind of going back to a concept they had years ago, which was to grow their own sort of farm team, develop their own bench.
What seems to be going on? Because it seems like you're throwing some awfully big salaries around now, and then to walk away from $250,000, that's crazy.
Again, this is the insanity of the debate over executive compensation. We've seen it in corporations. Unfortunately, in the public sector, it's the same. I mean, we even had conservative supervisors here in Orange County. At one point, were laying out that, you know, Riverside, San Bernardino, other counties were paying in excess of $300,000 for their CEOs.
Very good. All right. Thank you so much, Norberto. We'll see you again next week.
For more on these stories and other political news throughout Orange County, go to voiceofoc.org.